Hey there, Yarn Besties. Jaf from Hubby here, and you are listening to Skein and Tell, the podcast that unravels it all. Today's episode, well, we are zooming in on something tiny but mighty. Dye lots. You know, that little number hiding on your yarn label. It might not look like much, but believe me, it can make or break a project. Now, this sneaky number that has the power to turn your dream sweater into a patchwork nightmare or save you from a crafting meltdown is the subject of today. So grab your whip, pour yourself a cup of something cozy, and let's unravel this colorful mystery together. Now, I want you to imagine this. You've been working for weeks on the coziest cardigan or sweater or blanket. And, let's just, for the sake of keeping things simple, let's just say it's a cardigan. The fit, it's perfect. The yarn feels like a warm hug. And you're already picturing how fabulous you will look when the first chilly day of fall arrives and you walk into the office or your job or wherever wearing the beautiful, beautiful cardigan you've made, So you're just, you're knitting along happily or crocheting along happily when suddenly, disaster, you run out of yarn, but no problem, right? That's nothing. You just, you go on the Hobbii website, you order more of the same color, right? Same brand, everything, right? But when it arrives a few days later, and you decide, okay, let's get going, take the label off, bam, you attach that new skein. And after a few rounds, or actually not rounds because it's a cardigan, back and forths, something feels off. One sleeve is exactly, dusty rose, the dusty rose color you started with. And the other one, well, it's more like dusty raspberry. Or dusty dahlia. So instead of one perfect dreamy cardigan, you've got an accidental color block experiment. And sure, you could pretend it's intentional. Or you might think to yourself, I'm just going to wash this and the colors are going to blend or something. But let's be real. Sometimes it's just a mistake. It just looks like a mistake. And that, my fiber bestie, is the chaos that dye lots can bring into our lives. So let's look at this. Let's dive a little deeper and understand what a number of a lot actually means and what is it exactly, Let's look into it. So this mysterious lot number, basically it's like a yarn's family tree. Every time a yarn company dyes a batch of yarn, that batch gets a number. Think of skeins with the same lot number as siblings. They grew up in the same house, they share the same snacks, they went through the same dye bath together, and they are, 99% identical, Skeins from a different lot, they're cousins, They might have the same last name, but one of them inherited grandma's red hair and the other one, didn't. So even when the color name and the number on the label are the same, like ocean blue, a new dye batch might just be a little bit more turquoise or a little bit more navy. The human eye is extremely sensitive to those subtle shifts. And in a big project like a sweater or a blanket or a cardigan, those tiny differences can stand out more than you'd expect. It's kind of like baking cookies. You can use the same exact recipe, but sometimes one tray just comes out a little lighter or a little darker. You didn't do anything wrong. It's just the magic of dyeing. And I think we should just take a moment to actually look at why colors can shift from one dye bath to another, because I feel like that's also something that is a must. We must consider this in order to understand the dye lots. Now, why do these differences happen? Dyeing yarn is obviously part science, obviously part art, but also a big part chaos. There's honestly so many little variables that can affect the outcome. It is absolutely insane. And it's really, really, really small things. So take, for instance, temperature, the temperature of the water, right, for once. Or consider also the humidity in the air on that specific day, or how long the yarn sat in the dye bath. Even 10 seconds too much or 30 seconds too much can change the outcome. And for the sake of simplicity, even the sheep, and like I said, you know, when yarns are made from fibers from different animals, so even that can have a huge impact, because sometimes some fibers from some sheep take color very, very differently than other sheep. So when you hear that your skein of dusty rose looks more like dusty beige this time around, it's not because the yarn producer decided to troll you. You know, it's just the reality of working with fiber and with color. Sometimes the differences are, like I said, so subtle you'd never even notice until you held the skeins side by side, or even worse, until you actually start working with that yarn. And sometimes it's super obvious, right? But we can outsmart the dye lots, the dye lot gremlins. So let's talk a little bit about strategy, because we have to have a strategy. If you want your project to look seamless, obviously the safest move is to buy all the yarn you need all at once. And yes, that means planning ahead, even if you're not sure exactly how much you'll need, and even though you might end up with a skein or two extra laying around. So always add an extra skein or two. Think of it like buying snacks for a road trip. You'd rather have too many snacks than run out halfway and having to make another stop at the gas station, and then you get there later and blah, 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 right? So when your yarn arrives, don't just dive right in. Take a moment to compare those lot numbers. Make sure they match before you start your project. And keep those labels somewhere safe. I cannot stress how many times it made a huge difference to my project when I was running out of yarn. And then I figured, well, now I need to find a label. Where is the label? Where did I put the label? Oh, it's in the trash, because of course I am a smarty pants. So I think that, you know, take a moment to make sure that you don't throw away the label right away until you have at least finished the project. That's definitely a must do. Also, write it down. If you don't want to keep the label, write it down. You know, just a little, maybe on your project sheet or something. Write it down. Write the lot number, because a little yarn journal with notes about the brand, the color, and the lot number can save you so much heartache later. So those are definitely must-dos, I think, if you don't want to end with, you know, color blocks. So keep them in mind. Make sure you buy enough yarn. Add an extra skein just to make sure, if not two, just add that extra skein if you're just right there and you're thinking to yourself, okay, I'm gonna have, 20 feet left of yarn, 20 yards left of yarn, or 20 meters, or whatever system you are using. Do keep in mind, please, just add that extra skein, because it's gonna make a huge difference to just making sure that that you don't run out of yarn from the same lot. And hey, if you have that extra skein, laying around and you think to yourself, oh my God, Jaya, seriously, why did you tell me to buy the extra skein? My gauge is always perfect, and here I am now with a leftover skein of yarn. Well, then in that case, babes, in that case, you're going to make yourself a nice little tiny scarf or a headband out of it, or even turn it into granny squares. So, like I said, don't forget also about the little journal notes, whatever you want to call it, or add it on your phone. Take a picture of the it's even easier, so that you have it. Because if you do run out, and say for instance you go on the hubby website to buy more, but that lot number is different, then maybe some of your friends have it, or maybe somebody in your community has it, and that can save you a lot of headaches. So let's look actually at just a little bit more creative fixes for mismatched lots. Let's say that yarn doesn't exist, they don't produce it anymore, and you ended up with 5 skeins of lot number 00025697 and 00025698. So if it's too late, you've got yourself already mismatched dye lots, and yeah, you just have to go through with it. You don't have time also to maybe order more. You have to get this done. There's options, okay? Don't panic. There's options. One approach is to fade the skeins together. So that means that you alternate between them every couple of rows, so you're blending the color so the shift looks intentional. And then suddenly, it's not a mistake. But what if you're almost at the end of the project and you're missing, you're missing 20 rows, and now you have to start the new skein, but it's a different lot, and when you don't want that ombre effect. And well, another approach is to turn the new dye lot into a design feature. Use it maybe for cuffs, use it maybe for colors, or maybe the border of your blanket. That way the difference is framed as maybe part of the style. I mean, it's not ideal, and I know some of my friends who would be like, what are you even talking about? I would never do that. But honestly, hey, it's just the name of the game. And maybe even some people might think, wow, that's really, really cool that, there's just a subtle difference between your border or your edges or your cuffs and the rest of the piece. And if you're feeling bold, of course, you can pivot. Maybe that big throw blanket becomes a stylish lap size version, or the sweater that has mismatched sleeves, or it's cropped, or you turn it into a kid sweater, or you just frog everything. I'm just joking. But, remember that crafting is creativity. It's not perfection. I cannot stress enough how important it is to just remember that crafting is creativity, not perfection. And sometimes the quirks end up being the best part. Sometimes it's the quirky parts that make you stand out from the crowd and make others actually notice you. I mean, other crafters might notice that something is handmade when it's mismatched, when it looks a little wonky chonky, I think that really, really need to remember that crafting is creativity, not perfection. And also remember a little bit that back in the days before all this modern dye technology appeared, mismatched dye lots were even more of a nightmare. People dyed yarns with natural materials like madder root, for red, or indigo for blue. And the problem was that those colors could shift wildly depending on the season. So the soil, even the weather, of course, influenced how the dye lot looked that year. So imagine working on a massive shawl in 1850, and halfway through your beautiful red yarn, suddenly it kind of leans more towards brown because, I don't know, the madder harvest changed that year. There was no checking lot numbers back then, no ordering an extra skein, just vibes and disappointment, I guess. So honestly, as frustrating as it is when a sleeve doesn't match, we modern crafters have it pretty easy, I would say. So the bottom line on dye lots obviously is that yes, you don't want to deal with 2 dye lots, but they're not scary, They're just something to be aware of. So if you want consistency, buy enough yarn from the same lot right from the beginning, right from the start. Check your labels. Just do it. Just take all your labels and check them as soon as your order arrives. Keep a little yarn journal or take pictures. And if you end up with mismatched skeins, try to have them changed. Try to swap them. Maybe somebody in your community has the old dye lot that you need. But know that you're not doomed, You're just being handed more of an opportunity to get more creative. Because at the end of the day, your project is still a piece of art and you made it with your own 2 little sweet hands. So no little number on a label can take that away from you. So bestie, I hope this episode helps you feel a little bit more prepared and maybe a little less panicked next time you're squinting at yarn labels. Ooh, that tiny little lot number. Remember, every dye lot tells a story and you are the one weaving it into your stitches. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a fellow yarn lover, leave a review, a comment, or subscribe to our sweet little channel on Spotify, on YouTube, on Amazon Podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening from, so that you never miss out on another, cozy, chatty chaos. Until next time, keep your colors consistent, your skeins untangled, and your projects full of love and joy. Okay, love you, bestie. Bye.